welcome everyone. I'm excited to bring you today a truly unique project. I've never seen anything like it in my time in the crypto space. Today we have Scott Reed, the master of Dao's Aster, Johnny Fiasco. We're bringing you Diatom Dao. Diatom Dao, guys, say hello to the people.
Hey everyone.
Hey everybody.
Loyal.
GM.
All right, so gentlemen, a lot of our people will be familiar with your project by this point. I know I've had some questions from people in our group and just from people who have contacted me in general once they found out we were going to talk to you. But can you explain to for people who might not know, what is Diatom Dao? What is your vision? What's the purpose of the project?
Yeah, to put it very simply, Diatom is the DAO for ocean protection. And I think it's usually good to start off with just the origin story and how we got here to fully understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we see it going from here. So MobyBit and I have been working together for a couple of years, and he has a deep background in basically how can we take money and use effective altruism and find the best causes that can actually take that money and make a real impact. Because there's a lot of nonprofits, not a lot of them are very effective. And he and FinTech were working on launching an NFT project. They wanted to launch a series of NFTs and raise money for some of the ocean plastic cleanup partners that they were already working with at the time. And so we started talking. I'm a developer. I've been watching you for a while, and they're more on the ocean side. So it's kind of a perfect matchup of, okay, cool, let's use NFTs for good. And then I saw Olympus DAO and started getting totally obsessed with that and looking at the code base and like, ooh, this is really, really cool. I started seeing forks come out. Klima DAO specifically, is the other kind of green Olympus fork, which used the Olympus model to raise a bunch of money and buy up as many base carbon tons or carbon credits on the blockchain as they possibly could. So we saw that and we're like, oh man, like, why don't we do this for the ocean? Let's do this. We can clone their code base and learn a lot from what they've done and apply the same thing, but just funnel all of this money to these existing ocean plastic cleanup partners that we have. So that was very much the origin of it. And, brought on Mr. Robot, some other developers, started a Discord, and that was, 3.5 months ago now. And it's been a wild ride since then. We kind of started off not really knowing, where we're going to end up, just knowing we had this amazing system and tool to raise money for ocean protection. And then quickly decided to basically create our own version of the carbon credit on the blockchain. FinTech and MobyBit can go into this in more detail, but the first project that we have as a DAO is actually taking a large portion of our treasury, funneling it to these plastic cleanup partners, and then they use a very sophisticated way to actually measure it and kind of report back to us what they removed, and then we're minting that on the blockchain as what we call a plastic removal credit.
Rabbit, sorry to cut you off. I want to make sure we can hear you because you're fading. Your audio is kind of going out. It sounds like you're not quite close up to the mic. Oh. Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah. So our first project investment as a DAO is funneling a large portion of our treasury to these ocean plastic cleanup partners, and then they weigh them in a very sophisticated way. We're using 60 data points that'll be on the blockchain, and then we're minting those as what we call plastic removal credits, or PRC, which is basically tokenized plastic credits, a tokenized ocean version of carbon credits. MobyBit, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of recap some of that, Diatom is a DAO for ocean protection, full stop. That's sort of the broad thesis, and so we're looking at a number of different emerging and proven ways that you can actually map sort of economic assets onto the ocean, and particularly how you map it in a way that it's not about what you can extract from the ocean, but it's about the value of actually protecting and regenerating the ocean. Right. For example, it's been estimated by the International Monetary Fund that a living whale is worth $2 million, as a conservative estimate on economic value. And that's a concatenation of a whole bunch of different metrics, from the simplest of tourism to the more fundamental of how they interrelate with phytoplankton populations. How phytoplankton is like the lungs of the planet, produces about 50% of the oxygen we breathe. and sequesters about 50% of the carbon on the planet. And so there's all these incredible capabilities that the ocean has. It's also part of why the World Wildlife Fund estimates that the ocean is a collective $24 trillion asset, and it's degrading as we extract it. So we're actually losing that asset more and more over time, the more we extract and diminish the capability of the biggest ecosystem on the planet, which is the ocean. And so Diatom is really all about remapping the tokenomics so that you're actually generating returns based on how well the ocean is, right? How healthy and resilient this very fundamental asset is for all life on the planet. And so that's kind of the very top line. And then within that sort of nascent portfolio of projects, the first is this plastic removal credits, as Rabbit said. So plastic credits have been around for about a year. It's like almost the year mark since the first plastic credit from Vera.org came out. And if you're not familiar, Vera is the global standard for carbon credits. So the whole carbon credit market, they all adhere to the Vera standard. And that same standard setting organization came out with the plastic credit framework about a year ago. So it's super early and young. But plastic credits are currently a voluntary market, meaning, carbon credits are a mandated market, right? Organizations around the world have to buy carbon credits to, quote, offset the CO2 emissions that they're generating through their businesses, whereas plastic credits are not there yet. And I say yet, and I underline yet, because there's a lot of indication that we're moving towards a more mandated space around plastic credits. But essentially, the plastic credit market right now is a very loose constellation of projects, plastic removal projects around the world that have different standards. They don't always follow the same standards. And it's challenging for organizations, corporations in particular, who have sort of CSR, corporate social responsibility goals. These are kind of like, right, a Coca-Cola of the world who might be producing, manufacturing a lot of plastic wants to, remove 20,000 tons of plastic as sort of like a charitable endeavor. So they'll buy plastic credits from these providers around the world. And so there's a pretty robust voluntary market right now around plastic credits. And then more recently, like in Brazil, there's kind of moves towards more of a mandated plastic credit. The fact that Vera has a plastic credit framework is also a really strong signal that it's moving towards a mandated space as well. And so we're really not only do we believe that's coming and that it's going to be as big, if not bigger, of an economic mini ecosystem, similar to carbon credits, but it's necessary. It's like the plastic pollution crisis is very challenging. It's diminishing the global ocean asset. It is leading to all kinds of negative externalities, the least of which is that the average person consumes a credit card worth of microplastic now every week. And most of the really on the pulse of the data, scientists we talk to say that's conservative, which is sad to hear. And so we're pumping about 11 million tons of plastic into the ocean every year, and it can't keep going on without us ending up with more plastic in the ocean than fish in the sea by weight, which is the estimate that we're on track for by 2050 at the moment. So not only plastic removal credits, that's the first asset, but we're also exploring diversifying the treasury with different assets that are all about protecting the ocean. And that doesn't exclude even looking at projects that are innovation-based projects. Today, one of our advisors, we had a Twitter Spaces with Tom Chi, who's a co-founder of Google X at a venture firm called @One Ventures. And he was sharing how they've developed these like robots that actually regenerate coral reefs and plant seagrass. And so there's a whole landscape of different projects that are about generating value from protecting and regenerating the ocean. And so Diatom is all about building in the tokenomics that actually reflect returns to the DAO, to the members of the governance model, the members of the DAO, based on how effectively we actually preserve the ocean, not destroy it, which is the current economic model. So that's a pretty long-winded overview there.
It's okay. A lot of that, I think, will be very instructional to people. A few of the facts that you mentioned, I absolutely had no idea of myself. But I think we can all agree, and this is something I rarely say about a project, that this is a project that needs to succeed. Most of the crypto space, if we're honest, I think we're here because we may agree with the tech and the purposes of the tech. We may agree with individual financial freedom. We may agree with corporate-based or fiat money-based systems not being effective for our lives, but there's no real, I don't think there's a real movement on the planet who wouldn't agree that the ocean is one of our primary physical resources, and also for many people a spiritual resource. And the fact that all of you are working to protect it is an amazing thing. And I'll say that I don't know how your project will go, but it needs to succeed. It needs to work. So let's do it, fellas. Can you tell us, now that you've explained the overview of your project and what you're attempting to do, who's your team? How do you have the expertise to get this done? And basically, what would give people the faith that you can do what seems to be an extremely challenging undertaking?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've chosen not to dox up until this point due to the uncertain future nature and legalities of DAOs, especially in the US. But we can speak vaguely about our accomplishments. Like, I've personally been a serial entrepreneur for 12 years, created several media companies with millions of viewers, raised a tremendous amount of money for those things. Like, just launched a litany of companies. I'm also a full stack developer, and I'm really good at launching new things and big things. So my experience combined with the other guys who can jump in, I think you'll see is a pretty rare combination of skill sets that can combine kind of the digital world and the power of crypto with the real world problem that you just said is so important. We couldn't agree more. That's why we're here. So I'll let the other guys jump in.
Yeah, I'll just say that fintech here. This has been the funny part of this whole thing for us, is that our credentials are actually one of our greatest strengths with this whole project, and yet we can't really pull on them in the same way, which is also kind of cool because the project just really has to stand on its own. So I like that. I also liked it in the spirit of a DAO. It's not about any particular individuals. It's really about the collective. And so we're excited, to really move this in towards that and find a really great way to optimize the collective intelligence and passion that's showing up. And already we've been able to do that a lot. So it's incredible, the people who've come to this. So yeah, just generally, very broadly speaking, in my work is involved outreach through media and follow-up through technology around causes, and it's reached hundreds of millions of people and engaged a lot of people in solutions. So this is a very natural evolution for my work, and I'm super excited about it. This is kind of what's unique to this that everything else in the space, the cause space, doesn't have for the most part, is an economic engine. And so it's so many of the solutions to so many of the problems exist, they just don't have funding. So having an engine at the heart of this that can really make it happen is it's incredible. It kind of speaks to what you're saying earlier. People are in crypto for different reasons, and that's cool, right? People trying to make money and all the rest, and that's fine, and that's good, in fact. And it's the power of aligning that with having a positive outcome for the rest of the planet that it makes it so powerful. So that's what DeFi is allowing us to do, and we're super excited about it.
Yeah, and I think to follow up on that, fintech and I in particular have collectively raised many millions of dollars for different philanthropic and impact causes, and a lot of times through media campaigns, strong production background. fintech, also working with A-list celebrities on different campaigns before. And what we found is like over time, you just start banging your head against the wall with it's never enough funds being raised to really solve the issue. There's always this feeling of there's amazing scalable projects out there and they're just lacking the funding. And so the thing that's really been missing, and in particular with the ocean space, is a proper funding mechanism. Like it's the ocean has, for whatever reason, remained in the gray area of capitalism, except for just the raw extraction potential of fishing. We're seeing kind of the really dark side of that right now with overfishing. But what we really need to see is more of these regenerative finance economic models that take just a different approach in general to the mental model of what value is, of how we measure value, and the difference between extracting and actually protecting, and where value comes from out of that mentality. So beyond that, beyond the kind of core team here, there's extreme capabilities, and I think just the fact that our batch auction was announced on Thursday, we built the UI and had it ready to go by today, which is Monday, about a 4-day sprint. We've got all the tech capabilities we need. And then we're also pulling from a very strong group of advisors, former Coast Guard Commander Christopher Berlinden, who's a PhD in ocean sciences and oceanography. Scarlett Arana is the UN Global Ambassador for Sustainable Development Goal 14, which is the UN's Ocean Sustainable Development Goal called Life Below Water. Captain Charles Moore, who actually discovered the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and does extremely nuanced research in microplastics. Jeremy McCain from the Ocean Currency Network, who's an artist, who also has been building these different drones, basically autonomous drones that help protect the oceans. They kind of patrol fishing zones and can even scare off illegal fishing operations. It's pretty cool. Susie Mai, who's a Red Bull kiteboarding champion. She's also a co-founder of a community called Ultramarine, which is a big ocean advocacy network. Michael Fischbach, who's one of the world's most renowned whale advocacy experts, has a organization called Whale Guardians that's all about enlisting this kind of protocol for different ports around the world that help reduce ship strikes, since that's the #1 threat to whale populations right now. Dr. Nicholas Hahn from Singularity University, he's the impact chair for global grand challenges at Singularity University. Project Drawdown lead researcher Chad Frischman. So this is just a handful of the kind of constellation of intelligence that we're drawing from for both the environmental and ecological dimensions of the tokenomics and the approach of the DAO, and then the technical capabilities as well. And that's, again, just the beauty of a DAO. It's like we can really build this thing like a collective brain, where everyone can be rewarded proportionately to how much they're contributing in the community, and actually build a model that works more like nature works, right? It's a big ocean filled with many different contributors. It's not one. And so a DAO is really giving us a new substrate to actually like behave more like a proper ecosystem, which rewards all participants based on contribution. And so, yeah, our team and talent's just mind-blowing, like just the beginning.
That's good to hear, fellas. I think you will need that talent, as this is an enormous task. I can't remember which tech giant said it. I read the quote recently. Someone said something to the effect that we'll heal the earth when we understand that it's extremely profitable to do so. And I think that what you've been talking about, tying an economic engine to healing the ocean in this case, is something that for human beings has to happen. There's something in our nature that I think people can know that there's a threat, or know that there's a behavior that's negative that we are collectively engaged in. But it's very easy for us to say, oh, you know what, it's not me personally, or it's not my problem, or there's nothing I can do about it. Some of those points are even valid. And I think a DAO system is an interesting way to give people an outreach in which they can say, oh, you know what, there is something that I can do. I could participate in this, and attaching an economic engine to it can incentivize that in an amazing way. I'm definitely pulling for you, and I think that the idea has a lot of merit.
And just
So,
to,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead. Go
Johnny,
ahead.
if I could just add one more point on that, because I think this is really important. And it comes back to what I was saying and FinTech and I were saying earlier, that we actually have to unlock the economic models to solve the scope of the challenges that we face, particularly in the ocean. And the good news is that it's a huge economic opportunity. So as I mentioned, it's pretty widely accepted that the ocean is valued at least a $24 trillion asset, and there are ways to map that economically. Just with the plastics issue alone, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates that there's an $80 to $120 billion opportunity for organizations that don't look at plastic as waste, but actually recognize it as value and bring it back into new models of the circular economy. So moving from this linear economy that we've been in for the last 100 years, which is about extracting, producing something, and then calling it waste when we're done with it. That whole mindset is obsolete. And what we are shifting to, what we need to shift to, and what we naturally are shifting to is a circular model, which is much more similar to how other organisms on the planet work, where they don't just generate tons and tons of waste around them that destroys everything around them. They actually create circular models where they're reusing materials, they're reusing, as Tom Chi today on our Twitter Spaces said, every photon, savoring every photon of energy that's used. And so the good news is that this is like a whole new clean slate of innovation opportunity for investing in the circular economy and finding ways to actually capitalize on that $120 billion opportunity that, quote, plastic waste actually offers. And that's really what Diatom is poised to strike right at the heart of and be a leader in the circular economy.
So let me ask you a question. So I was just talking to my wife probably in the last, I would say, 2 months about something similar to this. And like with everything that's currently happening and the current production of plastics and everything, like, it seems like it's cheaper to just make new plastic with everything that's currently happening. And I know like your statistics that you're giving and stuff like that with how much the ocean's worth and all the different things. Like, what do you think it would take to show all of these big corporations and all of these other people that aren't on board with something like this? What do you think it would take to show them that getting this out of there and reusing it or repurposing it or whatever you want to call it is also profitable?
Yeah, good question. So there's kind of two or more pieces to this to answer it properly, but I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So one is actually that they would reuse it, but they don't want to do the work to do that, right? So there's like, there's one production point for plastics. Like if you think of one production facility and like a billion endpoints to that data stream, right? Like, imagine a little plastic bottle or something. It's produced, all of them are produced in one place, and then they just distribute like a massive cloud out into billions of data points out there in the world. So collecting it, processing it, and like homogenizing that waste, right? Because you get a trash can full of all kinds of different stuff. How do you actually homogenize it and get it back into something that can be reused is the real problem. That's actually the real opportunity and the challenge. And so the answer is like many of them actually would reuse it if it would just show up at their facilities properly, meaning it's been processed, it's been sorted, it's exactly this chemical composition of plastic that they actually need. And so that's kind of the good news, is that we're kind of missing, which is ironic for the decentralization paradigm. It's like we're kind of missing a middleman between waste and getting it properly prepared and sorted for recycling and otherwise processing. So that's kind of part one. And then part two is where was I going to go with that? So really, I mean, so really, if we can make it easy for them, they will do it. And then the other side of this is that is actually new material production, right? So moving towards types of materials that are not as ecologically destructive or as immortal, basically, as plastic. So again, we have this awesome Twitter Spaces that was recorded. It's on our YouTube channel today with Tom Chi. He talked about Cruise Foam, which is a organization that they're investing in that has like a like a fungus-made foam that can replace styrofoam. And if a turtle eats it, it's actually no big deal. And so, you know, and he was talking about the difficulty of, like, if you actually have, you know, something that is clearly better for the environment and you bring it to the producers and it's like 2 cents more expensive per unit, which is not a big deal in their margins, they'll say no, right? So there's just this kind of like flat approach to non-long-term thinking and not thinking about the negative economic externalities of those decisions. So really the mentality that we have to take is making it better, cheaper, you know, to use like the Daft Punk song, it's like harder, better, faster, cheaper, right? Like no matter what, it's like what we really have to do is not only make a better material that's symbiotic with nature, we actually have to make it more effective and a better product in general also, if we really want to solve these issues. And that's the good news is, like, it's all possible. I mean, there's like incredible solutions out there, from bacterial cocktails that can break down plastic to many different types of bioplastics, fungus types of materials that are much more ecologically symbiotic. And so we just need to innovate. Like, that's really it. We need to bring the funding to bear to the right types of innovation that'll actually solve the material problem on the one hand, and then, you know, the economic opportunity of bringing back into the value chain and the utility chain plastic that's out there that's just causing havoc, and homogenize it in ways that it can actually be used again.
And to
Yeah.
piggyback on that, also, you know, like I think that Moby painting the big vision of like make it better, easier, accessible. We also are taking that vision all the way, even in the tech. Like we plan actually to make not only crypto savvy investors that are very familiar with how to buy tokens and enter the space, but you also skip on a massive market segment that do want to help a cause, but they don't know where to start. And I think we're working literally that anyone that wants to invest on Diatom Dao would just go to Diatom Dao fund, and they'll be able to buy crypto directly from the website, like using their credit card or bank, and it will be a seamless experience. Again, back to the main vision, it needs to be like better, easier, accessible. To complement basically all the work that is happening outside too. Because if people on day to day cannot access this, or they cannot basically handle the barrier of entry, it also defeats the purpose.
And that is something that I could not more strongly agree with. I'm sure that all of us have many friends, family members, people we talk to on a day-to-day basis, coworkers, that you can tell them about something amazing and new. And if they could go purchase the coin from their Webull account, or they could do it easily on a centralized exchange, they'll do so. But the second that they have to go to Uniswap and try to learn how to use that, it creates too many barriers for them. And I think it's an amazing idea to have it that easily accessible that they could literally go and with a credit card or something purchase it.
Absolutely.
Get the most people you possibly can involved, and that will reap large scale economic benefits, not just for your project, but that is something that I think a lot of DeFi needs to get on board with at this point. So, gentlemen, we've talked about, we now have a very clear idea of what you want to do, and I think all of us sitting here know why you want to do it. I would say that it even is something that's going to have to happen in the future. Future generations are going to realize that it's not even optional. I think we still, at this point, sometimes go through life and we're a little bit blind to what's happening, or maybe some of the effects that we're having on the planet that we live on. I don't think future generations are going to have the luxury of that blindness. Now that you've set the stage for why it needs to happen, can you give us a brief rundown of your tokenomic structure, maybe your NFT structure, and explain to people how you're going to take the idea of, you know, creating this economic engine for ocean health and make it a reality through the economics of what you're going to create.
Yeah, sure thing. So we've had an interesting history already, even though we're only 3 months in. Our pre-sale is live right now in the batch auction format, but I'll go backwards in time a little bit to talk about where we're at right now in terms of the treasury and tokenomics. So we started off continuing with that idea of doing an NFT sale and launched a series of these whales NFTs. There's 50 of these. They're like cartoon whales, different patterns on them. Sold one by one, kind of like Nouns DAO. Heard of those? Those were sold on our website, and that was kind of like doing our seed round. Basically, the buyers of these NFT whales would get tokens commensurate with the amount of ETH they spent on the NFT. And those tokens have a 2-year vesting period, linear vesting period. So these people are very, very invested in what we're doing. We ended up raising nearly $8 million through those NFT whales. I think the most expensive one sold for 1.2 million. I think it was whale number 3. So you can see that on our website. So that's how we started, which was great. And then we did the whole, Discord thing and had people jump through a bunch of hoops to get on our whitelist. We really did a very, very, I think probably one of the most thorough jobs ever of really filtering down to only the most devoted people that were spending hours and hours doing things to get through these 7 levels that we set up in our Discord to get on the whitelist. And then did a whitelist sale for 3 million, and that was a couple weeks ago. And then right now we have our pre-launch happening in the form of a batch auction. And the idea there, it's kind of a new auction model to crypto. It's not widely used, but it says to be becoming more popular. The idea basically is that you have a sale happening over the course of, in our case, 3 days, and people can basically deposit and withdraw money freely throughout the course of those 3 days. There's 100,000 of our tokens that will be distributed to the people that put money into this. And after 3 days, you'll get a pro rata share of those tokens based on how much you deposited relative to the total. And then it gets a little more interesting on day 3 because the amount you can withdraw slowly decreases over the course of that day. So it drops to 50% and then goes down to 40, 30, 20, and 10. The idea there being that, a big whale can't come in and put $50 million, make the token look really expensive, and then just cut and run and withdraw 99% at the last minute to get a good deal. So it's a pretty cool model. We love it. We actually had an interesting week last week. We'd always planned to launch publicly on Copper Launch, and we did so. And then for the first time in Copper Launch's history, their platform went down due to some issues with the graph and things like that. So at a very critical moment in our sale, it was totally inaccessible, and it kind of just ruined the whole fairness of that fair launch. And they're still addressing those issues to our knowledge. So we decided to just build our own platform literally over the course of the last 4 days since that happened with this batch auction model. And that went live just an hour before the show started. So there's that. And then as for the future, so we are using the Olympus DAO system to basically bootstrap our treasury. I assume your readers or your listeners are familiar with Olympus, but basically it's a very, very effective way of raising a lot of capital very, very quickly, mainly through selling bonds. So you're selling your token at a discount, and people are getting that over a 5-day vesting period, so they can't just flip it instantly. And the idea there is to incentivize people to buy your tokens from you instead of just buying them on a decentralized exchange, so that you're actually bringing more money into your treasury versus just there being a buying and selling outside of that. And then what that enables is for you to have nearly 99% ownership of your liquidity pools.
Hey, just so you know, sorry to cut you off. You're fading in and out again.
It's still doing that, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go. You sound good again. Go ahead. Sorry.
Good. Okay. I think it's picking up my laptop now, my headphones. There we go. And the idea there, you own pretty much all of your liquidity pools. So all your LP fees go just straight back into treasury. The idea there is protocol owned liquidity. Instead of being at the mercy of mercenary liquidity providers, you own all of it. So you're good. So we're using that to get going. And then as far as I know, we're the only Olympus DAO fork that is publicly stating that our entire intention is to get away from that system after we've used it for what it's really good at, which is bootstrapping a treasury. But then it basically we have a very accelerated schedule of reducing the staking rewards and reducing bond sales, so that we can, ideally within a year, get fully away from that and just be focused on the token price increasing as opposed to diluting the token price, which is how most of these things end up.
So now that you've gone there, let's talk about that for a moment. All of our listeners, I can probably say on our service, will be intimately familiar with all of the major DAOs, Time, Klima, etc., going down the list. And something that everyone has noticed at this point is that the inflationary token model seems to start out with a bang, and it looks like it's ending with a whimper. So can you talk to us about your plan to get away from that, and how you can avoid the 90-degree downtrend that seems to be going on in most of the DAO tokenomic structures right now?
100%. This is our favorite topic. We can put a lot of thinking into this and how we can learn from the mistakes of other DAOs. And there's a couple of major things we're doing differently. First, and I think this is the most important thing. Let's see. I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and I had a lot of time to dive into every single ohm fork and try to figure out what was the differentiating factor that led to the success of some and the rapid demise of other ones. I went into it thinking it was going to be ones that had way too high of APYs, of rebase rewards, and that was actually totally unrelated to the success. It's the number one thing, which makes a lot of sense. It's very obvious once you hear it. The number one thing that indicates if an ohm fork will be successful or not is the investment strategy, the treasury investment strategy. Which, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense, right? People are looking for returns. The treasury has to be invested properly so that it gets the returns that the investors want. Otherwise, they're going to sell it and look for some better deal. So I think Klima is a really good one to use as an example in this comparison. So Klima's whole model is take the treasury and buy as many BCTs as possible. I don't know what percentage of the treasury right now is BCT. I think it's close to 100%. And it's, the idea is to increase the price of BCT, increase the price of carbon credits. But what they're doing is basically just taking their stable coins and converting it to a different currency that doesn't have a really big path towards appreciating in value. They might be doing some things special on top of that, doing some yield farming, maybe taking out a loan on their treasury and doing yield farming with that. But, you can do that yourself. That's not something special. So what we're doing is we call ourselves a fund. We don't call ourselves a reserve currency. We call ourselves a fund because the plastic removal credit is just the first asset and the first type of investment that we're making. There's also a tremendous number of other projects that mostly MobiBit is spearheading in investing in actual infrastructure that mints PRC. So a very simple example of this is a $1,000 metal apparatus that sits in a river statically and collects plastic that's flowing through it and is emptied once a day. And the plastic is moved to a recycling plant. And so what you can kind of think of that as, it's almost like buying a miner of Bitcoin or a miner of PRC instead of just buying the token outright. It's something that we buy once, and it just prints currency and prints money for our treasury in perpetuity. So there's small versions of that, and there's much larger versions of that, such as buying basically autonomous boats that go around collecting plastic. Each of these have are better or worse if you look at the numbers. And then we're also going to be investing in on-chain and off-chain companies that are working on ocean protection technologies. MobiBit previously referenced a couple of companies that are working on bacteria that actually consume plastic. So there are real investments to be made that are going to be tremendously valuable in the future. So we're not just compiling a treasury full of stable coins and some plastic here and there. This is very much a fund for ocean protection technologies.
That's incredible. Like, if you guys can pull this off, like, your project is going to be phenomenal. I'm really excited about your guys' project and everything that you guys are doing.
I want to add something on that. We have to to also show also our strategy on the technical side. So our policy team lead and people that work a lot on the policy are mostly have a very deep experience in mathematicians. So we're also able to not just say oh, we're gonna just use the expertise of the core team to actually choose what assets to invest in. We also have the data science and the investment banking background on the team to be able to take in all this data and use the power of data science and AI and actually come up with more insights. So there's also something that we're very excited about.
I would probably hear that a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, thinking that sounds like buzzwords and BS. But like, it's been amazing the type of people that we've attracted to this project. And I think it's because it is mission based. It's one of those very, very few companies, and especially crypto companies, that is mission based and has a real roadmap to having an impact. So the number of people that have shown up in our Discord and dedicated tremendous time to making this happen has just been tremendous. I mean, we didn't have a policy team 2 months ago at all. We were still like kind of fumbling through tokenomics ourselves because none of us went to school for that. And yeah, we've had these incredible people that went to school for years and years and years that are way better than us, that have come out of the shadows to make us very strong in those categories as well.
I think sometimes the strange thing about life is it's the ancient saying, if you build it, they will come. I think sometimes people with skills and talents are often wandering through life just looking for a reason to use those, looking for a place to contribute them to something that is truly righteous, which I think at this point we could conclude that your goal is. And like Scott said, I think that if you can pull this off and in going into the future, your project is going to generate an extreme amount of value. You've explained, how you intend to do that. One of the other things that concerns investors, however, is going to be obviously security of their investment. Now, you don't have any KYC right now, as far as you're not doxing anyone, and that is standard for pretty much all DAOs. You're absolutely correct. There is a murky legal gray area right now in the area of what you can and cannot do with a DAO. Can you tell us all if you're planning to use a third-party KYC service, or if there's any other way that you could ensure outside investors who don't get to see the conversations that you're having with the off-chain projects, et cetera? Is there a way for them to be able to conclude that their money is in safe hands?
I don't know that KYC would necessarily. Do you mean KYC of us as individuals or of the investors coming in?
It would basically be, using a third-party KYC service that verifies, that someone is going to know who has the treasury keys, etc., to prevent.
Right. It doesn't go to the public. It's just like that third-party company itself knows who you guys are or someone on the team is.
Oh yeah, that's something we would consider. I mean, at this point, we have a multi-sig wallet. We have 7 people on that wallet. 4 of them are the core team members that are present on this call, and then we have 3 other people from the community, with a 5 required out of 7. So that's like that's the main source of trust right now. Plus just people listening into our 2-hour town calls and really listening to us discuss between ourselves the decisions and trying to make that as transparent as possible. So I think that's gone a long way. And then just like Olympus DAO and most of the other DAOs, our roadmap is to transition away from us being the key holders at all and have elections within the DAO for multi-sig and for people really leading this. We're really obsessed with this being an actual DAO. That's like, I think something we're equally excited about. In addition to the whole, the mission of ocean protection is just the power of people coming together. So this is a grand experiment in that as well. And, we want to give it a shot. We want to have this be a real DAO and see if that actually works. So that's a big part of it.
And one other thing on this, because this came up kind of last week. We had anyone who had doubts in our community, if there were trust issues or not, they were completely eviscerated when we raised about $1 million in the first day on the Copper launch before the platform went down. And after bringing a town hall together right away, talking through the issue, deciding what we were going to do, and the fact that we no longer had a fair launch with Copper launch, we refunded every single person who put that in. And so if
In
there's
like the next 3 hours, we refunded over 300 investors on cost basis. So we did cover the loss of anyone that bought basically at a lower or a higher price and had to sell low. So that also like showed, how much basically we really care about fairness. And I think also on that point of outside or investors basically knowing more about the team, Twitter, for example, is a great place where today was a great day. We had multiple Twitter spaces with our advisors. So these are doxed people talking to the core team, proving again that just like fintech always uses that point, is like one of the biggest assets of the team is the credentials. And it's really interesting how like DAO space work, where like you cannot necessarily show that because of the legal gray area. But yeah.
So I 100% agree with you. Something that I do when I personally evaluate projects is I don't even look at much KYC. I look at the behaviors of the people involved in the project. And from what I've been able to see, you gentlemen are truly attempting to do what you say you're attempting to do. And I agree with you. Refunding $1 million is something that a scammer is unlikely to do. And that should set some of the concerns of people who are new to the DAO space and maybe unfamiliar with the fact that there's not a lot of KYC going on. Maybe that can set their mind at ease. So you've spoken about your ability to transition away from the standard high emission DAO tokenomics model. What do you view the end of that looking as? Are you planning on just, a hard cap of tokens at some point, and then value would be brought based on token appreciation? Is there some other type of mechanism that you're looking at to continue to create value? What do you see, even if it's a distant future, on that end?
Yeah, most Olympus forks, starting with Olympus themselves, have a published and even voted on schedule for a reduction of rebase rewards over time. Ours as well, based on the token supply. So when they hit a certain tier of token supply, then the rebase rewards drop by 50% or whatever it is. And we basically have a spreadsheet where we looked at Olympus and we looked at Klima's, and we sped it up by a tremendous amount. So it will be based on token supply, and it drops really rapidly in rebase rewards until it ends up having a very moderate, I think it's something like 3 to 5% APY, kind of like the base APY that we could offer for people to stake their tokens. So yeah, it'll be at as soon as possible. And I mean, the timing is dependent on how quickly we grow, but as soon as we possibly can, be just a normal DAO without 99% or 90% of it staked and a huge treasury that's just investing in the ocean.
Excellent. Gentlemen, is there anything that we've failed to talk about so far? Let's say that there's some area of your project or of what you're attempting to do that just due to unfamiliarity, Scott or I haven't asked you about, that you would feel the public really needs to focus in on.
Obi, do you want to talk about like Smurfs or some other infrastructure plays?
No, I'm just asking, is there anything that you feel like is core to what you're doing that we failed to discuss so far? Or have we pretty much covered what you think is the essence of what you're trying to do?
Oh yeah. Moby, if you would talk about Smurfs, they're a real thing, not like the TV show.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's. Yeah, I think you might have got kicked off.
Okay.
Fintech, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention you actually did really bring up the core of it all, which is that this is a different thing. It's no wonder that most DAO forks or most Olympus forks have just tanked because all they did was copy the code and put a different face on it. And what Olympus did made sense for them in trying to create a reserve digital currency, but it doesn't make sense for most other forks. So it's no surprise what happened. That was a problem from the beginning. So definitely, seeing this as just part of our fundraising opportunity to initiate this business. At the end of the day, like any business, the assets, the investments, they need to grow. That's the basic idea. So for most DAOs to be sitting on stablecoins doesn't make any sense in terms of any long-term sustainability. And most people were just trying to catch a wave anyway. So that is a real key difference in terms of what's happening for sure. And then the other major thing is just really this amazing place that DeFi is in right now, where, as you said, it's still inaccessible to a lot of people. These are early days. The process that people need to go through, to do certain things is hilarious. Sometimes it's like trying to get on a 24 baud modem back in the day. It's like, are we really? Is this really what it takes to do this? It should not be this hard. And this whole space of blockchains is, just beginning to communicate with the rest of the internet. And so it's this really amazing time, and there's a lot of really great opportunity in that. And part of what we're doing is connecting the dots between DeFi and the rest of the world, and being able to, have the power of this space connect with the environment and with the ocean, and with actually making real impact in the rest of the world. So that's a really exciting part of this whole thing for us. And I think is going to be a really exciting thing for DeFi in general coming up as we enter this next phase here.
I couldn't agree more. So if someone wants to be involved, let's say they've heard this chat and they believe in the project like you do, and they want to contribute, they want to be involved, they want to help the project, what is the best way for them to do that?
Definitely join the Discord. You can head over to diatom.fund. That's our website, and you have links to Discord in there. We have teams within Discord, so you can get more involved with specific aspects of the project, like marketing of the plastic removal credit, general marketing or tokenomics, things like that. We're really looking for people to, take initiative and kind of rise through the ranks and start to own parts of this DAO as we begin to decentralize more. And then it'd be great if you participated in our pre-sale. This will be basically setting the price floor for our token. So it's a solid investment. It'll be very interesting to watch over the next few days, especially day 3. So we would love if you supported us.
And how long is your pre-sale lasting?
That's 3 days. So it started today at 5 p.m. Eastern. So it'll be Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern that it ends.
Excellent.
And I would assume that people can find out if they're unfamiliar with how to go about doing that. I would assume that information is available on your Discord.
Yeah, it's also on the actual website. It's a super long Medium article. We take a lot of time into explaining things, kind of explain like on 5 type of ways, because we do seem to have more people that are coming and making their first crypto investment into Diatom because of the love for the ocean. So yeah, it's spelled out. By the way,
an FAQ right under the auction itself, like right where the widget for doing the deposit and withdrawing, there's like frequently asked questions to make it even easier.
And links to all of this can be found at diatom.fund.
Would you guys mind bringing MobyBit back on? He is a second instance. He got kicked off. I think he might be in the waiting room or something. There we go. Thanks.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we got you back.
Awesome. So yeah, that was all a really good summary. What I was going to add, just to, if we didn't cover anything, a few exciting things. One, Rabbit mentioned Smurfs, which is this concept that we're developing, investing in infrastructure. These are sort of the equivalent of a plastic mining machine, like a Bitcoin mining machine, but a plastic reduction or plastic removal credit mining machine. And they're basically waste management facilities that can be rapidly deployed to regions around the world that need waste management and are within 50 kilometers of the ocean. So those are the places that are the highest risk of actually delivering plastic into the ocean. And so SMRF is an acronym for Smart Material Recovery Facility. And again, just touching on what we mentioned about 20 minutes ago, that the real problem right now in the recycling, waste management, and plastic space is actually processing, preparing the plastic to be recycled. So these infrastructure would help with that. They would also serve as kind of collection points for our plastic removal projects around the world. Secondly, we're exploring creating an open source project where we take the existing maritime fleet. So imagine in the same way there's billions of cars on the streets, and Uber aimed to harness them in order to transform and disrupt urban transportation. We are working on a project where we create sort of a decentralized, crowdsourced approach to not only identifying where plastic is in the ocean, but actually crowdsource the removal of it. And so this is done through a series of low-cost GPS trackers that can be distributed to what are called vessels of opportunity that are actually going through the big garbage patches, etc. When they see big plastic, they tag it, and then other vessels can remove it. So building out kind of almost like a game layer for the ocean, where anyone can participate in data tracking, identifying plastic, and then get rewarded with bounties for actually removing it. And then the last thing that I'm excited about is we're working on another larger NFT collection that's going to come out within a couple months. That will be a much bigger collection than the 50 whales that raised 8 million. This will be a more accessible sort of level, larger collection that's going to have some fun gamified ways of interacting with the whales NFTs. They'll actually be able to relate to each other. So pretty excited about that as well. Those are a few upcoming things that we're stoked about. But yeah, in general, what Rabbit said, what FinTech said, what Robot said, now's the time to, it's not going to be an option in the future. We're going to have to put resources towards protecting the underlying mechanisms of life on Earth. And the more we shift economics now towards actually showing that is value, it's existential value, the better. And it's a big opportunity space. It's a huge economic zone for actually finding opportunity and innovating in. So yeah, if you believe in that, if you feel and resonate in that, the last chance to get DIAT before we hit the bigger exchanges is this Thursday when the batch auction pre-sale ends. So would love to welcome you into the community.
And I'll say something that I don't normally say here. And once again, none of this is financial advice. This is information, folks. I've ridden a lot of projects into the ground just waiting to see if they would moon. I've invested in a lot of projects just to see if I can make some money off of it. And I know everyone listening, if you've been in crypto for any length of time, has done the same thing. I'm going to invest in your project because I want it to work. It needs to work. It needs to work for the planet. And I'm hoping you can pull it off. And if I have to lose some money to try to help you do so, I'm willing to do that. And I would encourage people, even if this isn't the one for you, even if Klima wasn't the one for you, at some point, we're all going to have to start to pull together, and we're going to have to find things that we can do from wherever we're at in the world to try to take the plastic out of the oceans, to try to take the carbon out of the sky. We're going to have to do these things. So I would encourage anyone that's heard this, that believes in the vision, don't think of it as any type of economic investment. Think of it as something that just has to be done. We're all going to have to do it. And I applaud you for attempting to make this possible for everyone to get involved. Is there anything that you'd like to leave anyone with before we end?
I just want to add that I really appreciate what you said there, and just add to it for everyone that we are equally as passionate about making this work for investors and the economics work, because that is what's going to drive the change, and that's the whole flip that needs to happen. And so that's really the heart of what this is about. So we've got our eyes on the prize. We're not getting carried away by just the cause piece of it either, because to make the cause piece work, we've really got to make the financial piece work. So we're pretty excited about what we can do in this space on that front.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. We really appreciate you stepping over here. I know you're extremely busy. I hope you succeed in this endeavor, and we'll be watching closely. People, please head over, join their Discord, find out more about the project, get involved. and we will see you all on the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Make some magic happen.